I never expected a routine trip to my favorite coffee shop to turn into a nightmare. I wear a prosthetic arm due to an accident where I lost my arm, but that day Karen rips it off and says it looks disgusting. Here's how it all went down. My name's Alex. A little over 2 years ago, life threw me a curveball, a car accident, a fateful evening, and the next thing I knew, my left arm was amputated below the elbow. The aftermath was a long journey of anger, depression, and acceptance. But as with any storm, there was a silver lining. With advancements in technology, I was blessed to receive a prosthetic arm. The prosthetic was unlike any traditional ones you'd imagine. It wasn't an attempt to replicate the human skin or form. Instead, it was sleek, metallic, and futuristic, something straight out of a sci-fi movie. To me, it was more than just a prosthetic. It was a symbol of my resilience, my ability to move forward, and my embrace of the future. The local coffee shop near my workplace became my sanctuary. The staff there had become more like friends than mere acquaintances. They'd seen me at my lowest, days after the accident, and watched as I rebuilt myself, both mentally and physically. They cheered for me when I first walked in, flaunting my new arm, and defended me when a customer once said it was too robotic for their taste. It was this very place where our story begins, on a day that seemed like any other. Little did I know, I was about to face one of the most jarring experiences of my life. The coffee shop was slightly busier than usual that day. A local musician strummed soft tunes on a guitar in the corner, and a group of students chattered animatedly about their projects. I had settled into my usual corner with my laptop as I waited for my coffee. Suddenly, there was a commotion near the entrance. An older woman draped in a fur coat, which seemed absolutely out of place given it was midsummer, entered the coffee shop. I noticed her glaring at a young barista, probably for not recognizing her supposed importance. I thought nothing of it, returning my focus to my work. But then, I felt a sharp tap on my shoulder. Reluctantly, I looked up, finding myself face to face with the woman. Her pinched face was framed by her over-bleached hair, which was fashioned in an over-the-top updo. The look was completed with a splash of bright red lipstick. Karen, as we'll aptly call her, because she seemed like the epitome of every Karen meme I'd ever come across. Her voice broke my trance. "Young man," she began, sizing up my prosthetic with evident distaste, "have you ever thought about covering that up? It's, well, not suitable for such an elegant establishment." I raised an eyebrow, glancing around the casual coffee shop. "Elegant establishment?" Unfazed by my sarcasm, she continued, "You really should think of others. That thing," she gestured towards my arm with a dramatic flourish, "is just so disgusting." Taking a deep breath, I calmly replied, "It's my arm, ma'am. I'm comfortable with it." She leaned in, her perfume overwhelming my senses, as she whispered conspiratorially, "You should think of the children. Innocent souls might get nightmares." Before I could reply, she was distracted by her reflection in the glass door, pausing to check her lipstick. Shaking my head in disbelief, I refocused on my laptop, hoping that would be the end of my interaction with Karen. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that she was only getting started. As I tried to refocus on my laptop, feeling the weight of Karen's previous comments, I suddenly felt a violent tug on my prosthetic arm. Before I could process what was happening, I found Karen, her face flushed with determination, attempting to unhinge my prosthetic. "I knew it!" she exclaimed triumphantly, holding a part of my arm aloft. "I knew this thing could come off. I'm doing this place a favor. Such disgusting things shouldn't be flaunted." The entire coffee shop went from a buzz of activity to a stunned silence in mere seconds. The soft tunes of the local musician halted abruptly, and the group of students, previously deep in discussion, looked over with mouths agape. A mixture of emotions coursed through me. Anger, humiliation, but predominantly disbelief. "How dare you!" I uttered, my voice shaking but loud. With an air of twisted satisfaction, she replied, "I'm only trying to help. You might thank me someday." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a barista hastily making a phone call, presumably to security or the police. At the same time, a pair of patrons, a young mother with her toddler and an elderly man who frequented the shop for his daily crossword puzzle, stood up, clearly intent on confronting Karen and defending me. The casual ambiance of the coffee shop had been shattered, replaced with tension. As the reality of Karen's audacity set in, a wave of support began to surge within the coffee shop. The young mother, holding her toddler's hand, approached Karen assertively. "You need to give that back right now," she said, her voice firm. The elderly man, abandoning his crossword puzzle, joined her. "Young lady," he began, using a tone of authority, "I've seen many things in my time, but this takes the cake. Return the young man's arm at once." Karen, for the first time, seemed to falter. Surrounded by a growing crowd of displeased patrons, her confident facade began to crumble. A barista, phone still in hand, approached the scene. "Ma'am, security is on the way. It would be in your best interest to hand the arm back." Feeling the weight of the situation, and perhaps realizing the gravity of her actions, Karen handed my prosthetic back to me. Her face was a blend of defiance and embarrassment. While I hurriedly reattached it, another customer, a college student, offered me a reassuring pat on the back. "Some people, huh?" he remarked, shaking his head. Whispers filled the air as the situation de-escalated. Some patrons offered words of comfort, while others shared their disbelief over Karen's behavior. The musician in the corner, perhaps trying to lighten the mood, strummed a playful tune that earned a few chuckles from the crowd. Karen, realizing she had no allies in the room and with the imminent arrival of security, hastily made her exit, shooting me one last glare as she went. After Karen left, the coffee shop returned to its usual vibe. I got a few pats on the back and some "are you okay" questions, which I appreciated. The barista gave me a free coffee as a small gesture, and I joked that it was probably the most dramatic coffee I'd ever had. A couple of regulars said they'd keep an eye out in case Madame Leopard Print decided to make another appearance. We all had a good laugh about that. The musicians started playing again, and slowly, the chatter and hum of the place returned. I continued to go to the coffee shop, and every time I walked in, there was always a nod or a smile from someone who had been there that day. It was a reminder that even in the face of crazy events, a bit of kindness and community could make everything right again. And as for my arm, well, it continued to be a conversation starter, but thankfully no more drama. In life, we often encounter situations that challenge our beliefs and test our patience. These moments, while initially daunting, offer us an opportunity to reflect, learn, and grow. Growing up with a mother who had a penchant for drama was like living in a never-ending whirlwind of chaos. From her volatile behavior to the constant unpredictability, every day was a roller coaster ride. But little did I know, the darkest twists and turns were yet to come. Here's how it all went down. I've always said my mother is a piece of work, and believe me, that's putting it mildly. Let's rewind to when I was a teenager, and things were pretty wild. Mom had some mental health issues, and instead of taking her doctor-given meds, she'd choose whiskey. Our home always smelled of booze, which was basically a heads up that she might go off any moment. If someone suggested she take her meds and lay off the drinking, boy, you were asking for trouble. A slap or a shout, something like that. Then she'd always talk about leaving my dad. It was like a bad movie on repeat. But here's the kicker. She'd always take my little sis. Sometimes she'd even wake her up in the middle of the night to leave. Me? I got left behind. When I'd ask why, she'd say, "Because you got a job," which honestly made zero sense. And my sister? She was just dragged along for the ride. The craziest part? Dad would call the cops every time Mom took off with my sister. But they never did anything about it. I mean, isn't that kind of like kidnapping? One time, she yelled at me for not driving her around on her wild nights out. Funny thing, she stopped me from driving when I was 14, thinking I'd use it to escape the madness. My 18th birthday came around, and for some reason, she asked what I wanted. I straight up told her, a divorce. And surprise, she actually listened. Years flew by, and the dark cloud of my parents' turbulent marriage finally parted when they got divorced. In its wake, life presented me with moments of joy. Chief among them, my engagement to my high school love. Man, just when I thought things might get better, Mom went all dramatic again. I was deep in wedding planning, and she hit me with a bombshell. "Look," she began one evening, a sharp edge to her voice. "If your dad's coming to your wedding, your stepdad and I won't. You choose." I stared at her, stunned. "Mom, can't we all just be there for my big day? Why does it always have to be this way?" She just crossed her arms, eyes cold. "It's him or us, decide." I sighed, desperation creeping in. "Fine, he won't come. Happy now?" Big mistake. Huge. I missed out on having my dad walk me down the aisle, and the dance I always imagined never happened. But things didn't stop there. When I was about to give birth to my eldest, Mom threw another fit. I was at the hospital when she called. "I heard your dad's coming to see the baby. I swear if he gets to see her before me, I won't be there," she hissed over the phone. Exhausted, I said, "Mom, this isn't about you or Dad, it's about my daughter." But she snapped back, "I mean it." Regrettably, I tried to keep the peace. Okay, you can come first. Just please, no drama." Yet during labor, there she was, right by my side, chiding me. "Stop making so much noise, it can't be that bad." I remember thinking, is this for real? Here I was, bringing a life into the world, and all she cared about was herself. After that traumatic incident, we severed ties, yet, as if pulled by some masochistic magnet, she came back, tearfully begging forgiveness on our doorstep. "Please, I'm begging you," she sobbed, dropping to her knees. "Let me make things right." I hesitated, my heart warring with my mind. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She acted all sweet, making it seem like we were finally on the path to reconciliation. But boy, was I wrong. It was like inviting a snake back into your home. Then, the unthinkable happened. My baby girl was taken away by CPS. No, I wasn't a bad mom. No drugs, no neglect. She had a medical emergency while we were staying with my dad, and they took it the wrong way. You'd think a mom would be supportive, right? Not mine. Through teary eyes and a choked voice, I still remember her words, "This is your fault. You lost her." Yet here's the kicker. The adoptive parents, bless their hearts, let her visit. Can you believe it? She got to see my daughter while I could only hold on to memories. Even they couldn't handle her drama for long, though. They cut ties, and honestly I couldn't blame them. Not one bit. Another 2 years sped by, and I found myself with husband number 2 and a second pregnancy. You'd think with time, my mother's perspective would have shifted, matured even. Instead, I was met with a barrage of vitriol. "How could you be so thoughtless and get pregnant again?" she chided, her words dripping with contempt. "I won't acknowledge that, child. After all I've been through, how could you be so cruel?" Yet another chapter closed, and contact was severed. But as life's turbulence threw me into the throes of an abusive relationship, ending in yet another split, fate decided it was time for our paths to cross again. Hearing of my turmoil, my mother saw an opportunity and swiftly moved in, feigning concern and suddenly showering affection on the very child she had denounced. Hopes of normalcy blossomed in my heart. But history has a habit of repeating itself, and I soon realized her promises were as fleeting as her sobriety. I didn't completely shut her out, choosing instead to maintain a cautious distance. Over time, we tiptoed around a semblance of a relationship. There were moments of genuine connection and happiness. For the first time in forever, I felt like I had a mother again. But with my third husband, whom I genuinely loved and shared a healthy relationship with, her true colors surfaced once more. She lavished him with affection, excessively so, proclaiming, "I finally have a son." We even went to the extent of flying her out for Christmas, but the reunion was far from merry. Her constant inebriation, baseless accusations, and an unsolicited attempt to discipline my daughter snapped the fragile thread of tolerance. A forceful "get out" echoed from my lips. What followed was an uneasy peace, punctuated by her antics, the worst being her disgraceful behavior at my brother-in-law's funeral. The last straw. I drew a line in the sand, sobriety or estrangement. Our relationship hit pause. Yet, fate has a peculiar way of pulling us back. A year later, a call pierced the silence. My beloved great-aunt had passed away. Along with the somber news, my mother announced her sobriety. Hope, being the relentless emotion it is, spurred me to attempt reconciliation again, for the sake of my daughter, if nothing else. One rule, however, was non-negotiable. No mention of my dad. Despite my father's gentle nature, evidenced by the one time he broke down after spanking me, she painted him as the villain. But old habits die hard. Each call became a painful reminder of the past, with my father's name slipping through her lips time and again. This year was wild. My mom got really bad with her drinking, like a 24-pack a day and a gallon of Jack every other day kind of bad. By July, she was so wasted, she called me up. "Why haven't you brought me over?" she snapped. "Why haven't you visited?" Then she dropped a bomb. She wanted to buy a plane ticket, but just for me. Her messed up reason? That kid isn't my grandchild. I only have one. She meant my older daughter. I was furious. I shot back, "Never call me again, just pretend we're gone, we're through." But she had to get the last word. Out of the blue, I started getting all these random deliveries, even Omaha steaks. It was so weird. That was it for me. I blocked her everywhere. No more dealing with her drama. Thinking back, my childhood was one crazy ride. After some therapy, I realized something big. It wasn't me, it was her. Seriously, my mom might be the most dramatic parent ever. It wasn't just me getting fed up with her. My sister had already distanced herself, and after this last blow-up, she was totally done too. I've left out a bunch of other crazy stories, but as my kid puts it, that's where I come from. So, yeah, that's the story of me and my mom. It's been a lot, but I've come out the other side. Growing up was a mix of confusion, frustration, and just trying to make sense of it all. But life has a funny way of working out. Today, I found my own path, learned to set boundaries, and understood that sometimes family can be the toughest lesson. Despite everything, I believe everyone's got a chapter they don't read out loud. Mine just happens to have a few extra twists and turns. Looking back, I'm grateful for the resilience it built in me. Through it all, I learned what I wanted, and more importantly, what I didn't want in my life. We know an abuse when we see one. We just don't want to acknowledge it when this abuse is done by a family member or a loved one. It's important to remember that blood relation doesn't excuse toxic behavior. Sometimes it's necessary to distance ourselves from these individuals for our own well-being and mental health. Stay strong and prioritize your own happiness and safety above all else, even if it means cutting ties with family members. I never expected a simple train ride home after exams to turn into a tense courtroom drama. with all eyes fixed on me. The pregnant woman, the elderly woman, and the growing chorus of opinions created an atmosphere thick with judgment and tension. But little did I know, this encounter would spark a chain of events that would challenge my beliefs and lead to a surprising revelation. Here's how it all went down. The college bell had rung its liberating chime, signaling the end of our final exams. I was mentally exhausted, but there was an air of relief and excitement. The summer was finally upon us. Man, these exams felt like they went on forever, Jake said as we exited the college gates. I nodded in agreement. Feels like we've been freed from prison. Our preferred method of travel was always the city train. It was like a rite of passage. The station was buzzing with students like us, office-goers and street vendors trying to sell quick bites. As we boarded the train, Jake remarked, "You'd think with exams over, the universe would grant us some good karma with a peaceful ride home." The compartment was filled with an eclectic mix of people. A group of musicians strumming their guitars, a mother trying to soothe her crying baby, and an elderly couple engrossed in a crossword puzzle. We managed to find a couple of seats amidst the chaos. "Score!" Jake exclaimed as he plopped down, pulling out his phone. "New meme trends going viral. Want to see?" I leaned in, ready to dive into the world of internet humor, but the universe had other plans. The doors of the train slid open with their usual mechanical chime. Through the small crowd, a visibly pregnant woman stepped in. Her tired eyes scanned the compartment, searching for a haven in the crowded space. She adjusted her bag and gingerly touched her belly, as if to reassure the life within and herself. Just as I was about to process what I should do, an elderly woman dressed in an old-fashioned coat and scarf boomed from across the carriage. "Young man, give her your seat." She pointed straight at me with a decisive finger. Jake, always the one to crack a joke, leaned in and whispered, "Did we just enter a courtroom drama or what?" He raised an amused eyebrow. "Man, the universe sure has weird ways of entertaining us." Murmurs swelled around us like a rising tide. A teenager with headphones pretended he heard nothing, but his foot tapped with nervous energy. An older man in a business suit cleared his throat, shooting me an expectant look, while a group of students whispered among themselves, their giggles piercing the tense atmosphere. Then, breaking through the low hum of discussions, a young girl, her eyes wide with curiosity and her hands clutching a faded teddy bear, tugged at her mom's sleeve. "Mommy," she questioned in that loud, clear voice only children possess, "why doesn't the man stand up for the lady?" Her mother, looking slightly embarrassed, tried to hush her with a gentle pat. "Shh, honey, not now." But the question hung in the air, echoing the sentiments of many, and I felt every pair of eyes on me, weighing and measuring. The weight of the gazes made my neck feel hot, and a bubbling mix of irritation and defensiveness rose within me. "Listen," I blurted out, louder than I meant to. "It's not about giving up the seat, it's the way it was demanded." The elderly woman, who had sparked this whole scene, fixed me with a stern gaze. Back in my day, we didn't need to be asked. Young folks knew their manners. Around us, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. It felt like being in the eye of a storm, the entire compartment hanging on a thread, waiting, watching, forming silent judgments. With every passing second, I felt the urge to push back against the prying eyes and defend my stance. So am I a jerk for refusing to offer my seat to the pregnant woman? As the tension continued to swell, a voice, distinct from the others, rang out. A young woman juggling a wriggling toddler on her hip shared her own plight. "I ride this train every day, and trust me, with him," she gestured to her son who was trying to wriggle out of her grasp. "It's no walk in the park, but no one's ever offered me a seat." Another voice chimed in, this time from an elderly man leaning heavily on a wooden cane. He laughed, a raspy chuckle filled with years of wisdom. "Been on my feet since 3 stations back. They say age has its privileges, but guess they don't apply on the metro." The train car began to fill with more voices, as more people started sharing their stories. A college student, carrying a big backpack, spoke about standing for long hours after a tough day at school. A nurse, still in her work clothes, shared about her long day, which lasted 12 hours. Each person had their own story, showing that everyone has their own challenges every day. At first, it seemed like there might be a big argument, but soon, the train car was filled with all sorts of conversations. Some people were nodding and saying, "Yes, that happened to me too." Others were having more serious talks, maybe not always agreeing, but still listening to each other. And some were even laughing, sharing funny stories or jokes about things they all understood. So, instead of people getting mad at one person, the whole train car became a place where people were talking about understanding each other, being kind, and what it's like living in a busy city. It was like everyone realized that they're not so different after all, and that everyone has their own story. Soon, the familiar tone of my station's announcement filled the carriage. I gathered my things and rose from my seat. The pregnant woman, caught up in conversation with another passenger, glanced my way. "This is my stop," I said, motioning toward the vacant seat. "Please, take it." She paused for a moment, her eyes studying mine, before a hint of a smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you," she murmured, more an acknowledgement of our shared experience than the seat itself. Stepping onto the platform, I was instantly hit with the usual rush and noise of the station. All that tension from before, gone. Just like that. It made me think, life's not just about what one person thinks or does. It's about all of us and the crazy different things we all go through. As I headed out, blending in with the city's hustle and bustle, it hit me. What started as just another train ride turned into this big eye-opener about people and their stories. Makes you wonder what everyone's dealing with, doesn't it? It's perfectly acceptable for teens to sit at the front of the bus if there is space. However, as soon as an older person, pregnant woman, or disabled individual boards, it's important to immediately stand and offer them your seat, even if there are no seats available. There's no need to say anything like, "Here, take my seat." Simply move when you see them approaching. This small act of kindness can have a significant impact on someone's day. As I reached for my life-saving EpiPen to combat an impending allergic reaction, little did I know that Karen will confiscate my EpiPen thinking it's vape and demands I get expelled. Here's how it all went down. It was a typical sunny afternoon at school, and I had settled into my usual spot in the courtyard for lunch. I was with my usual group of friends, and we were in the middle of debating the best movie of the year. As I unwrapped my sandwich that I bought and took a bite, an all-too-familiar sensation began in my throat. Ever since I could remember, peanuts have been my nemesis. My allergy was discovered when I was just a toddler, after a tiny bite of a peanut butter cookie led to a frantic trip to the emergency room. Since that day, my mom, always the protective figure, emphasized the importance of being prepared. "You can't always control what's in the food around you," she'd remind me, "but you can always be ready." Her words echoed in my mind every time I packed my bag for school, ensuring my EpiPen was safely tucked inside. Now, feeling the early signs of a reaction, I knew I had to act fast. I zipped open my bag, pushing aside textbooks and notebooks, searching for the familiar shape of my EpiPen. Just as I was about to press the EpiPen against my thigh, a sudden dark shadow cast over me, momentarily blocking out the sun. I looked up, squinting, to find Karen towering over me. Known around school as the ever-present, overly involved parent, Karen had a reputation for sticking her nose where it didn't belong. She was always at school events, often volunteering just so she could keep an eye on things. Her eyes, usually scanning for any hint of mischief, were now fixed on me with an intensity I'd never seen before. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice dripping with accusation. Before I could even process her question, she reached down with surprising speed and snatched the EpiPen from my grasp. "Vaping in the school courtyard? You should be ashamed," she shouted, holding the EpiPen up like a trophy of her vigilance. Desperation and panic surged through me. "Karen, that's not a vape!" I exclaimed, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tightening in my chest. "It's my EpiPen! I'm having an allergic reaction! I need it now!" But her face, set in a mask of righteous indignation, told me she wasn't ready to listen. With a grip on my arm that was stronger than I would have expected, she began marching me towards the principal's office, her heels clicking loudly against the floor with each step. "You think you can get away with this? Not on my watch," she ranted, drawing the attention of everyone we passed. As we neared the office, she shouted, "You're going to regret this! Expulsion is the least of your worries!" Her voice was so loud that a few teachers peeked out of their classrooms, their faces a mix of concern and confusion. Barging into the principal's office without even knocking, Karen dramatically slammed the EpiPen on his desk. "I caught him red-handed," she declared, pointing an accusing finger at me. "Vaping in the middle of the school courtyard. Can you believe the audacity?" By this point, my vision was getting blurry, and I could feel my strength waning. Desperately, I managed to croak out, "It's not a vape. It's my EpiPen. Please, I need it." My voice was barely above a whisper, but the urgency in my eyes was unmistakable. The principal's eyes widened in recognition as he saw the EpiPen on his desk. Without hesitation, he reached out, grabbing the device and handing it over to me. I wasted no time, pressing it against my thigh and feeling the familiar sting as the medicine entered my system. Almost immediately, the world stopped spinning, and my breathing began to stabilize. Karen, on the other hand, appeared to be spiraling further into a state of delusion. Her face shifted from embarrassment to a wild mix of anger and bewilderment. "This is all a ruse!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "He's trying to distract us from the truth!" The principal, looking thoroughly perplexed, tried to get Karen to calm down. "Karen, this is a medical emergency, and the device is genuine," he said, his voice tinged with concern. But Karen wasn't having any of it. She darted her eyes around the room like she was searching for hidden cameras, still convinced there was some elaborate conspiracy. Her finger pointed accusingly at both of us, her voice quivering with manic conviction. "You're all in on it. You're trying to silence me and hide the truth." Her voice grew shriller as she continued. "They're trying to pull the wool over my eyes." The principal and I exchanged a bewildered look as Karen's tirade spiraled out of control. The strangeness of this story didn't end there. Instead, Karen's behavior took a more disturbing turn. For the next few days, she started stalking me relentlessly, convinced that I was a key part of her wild conspiracy theory. She'd pop up out of nowhere, snapping pictures of me with her phone and watching my every move like a hawk. In the hallways, she'd corner me, her eyes wide with obsession, demanding that I prove the EpiPen was secretly a vape. Her persistence was relentless, and at times it bordered on harassment. The bizarre episode with Karen and her wild conspiracy theories eventually reached its conclusion. After weeks of relentless stalking and bizarre confrontations, Karen seemed to suddenly stop. Nobody was entirely sure why she had stopped, but it was a relief for everyone involved. Life at school began to return to normal, and Karen's antics became more of a peculiar memory than an ongoing concern. For me, it was a strange and unsettling chapter in my life, but it was also a valuable lesson in resilience and the unpredictability of human behavior. Sometimes life throws you curveballs, and all you can do is stay grounded and carry on. Wow, this story had me on the edge of my seat. Can't believe Karen mistook an EpiPen for a vape and caused such a scene. Glad everything turned out okay in the end, though. Stay safe, everyone. My husband and I had a great life together, until one day his father got sick and needed to be taken care of. Little did I know that this would be the start of a chain of problems in our relationship. Here's how it all went down. I am 26 years old, and my husband is 27 years old. We live with his parents. His father had some health issues and needed care, so we agreed to move in and help out. My father-in-law is generally doing better now, but there are still a few things he can't do, which my husband now takes care of. We have discussed moving out. I want to, but my in-laws are very resistant to the idea, stating that there is plenty of room here, and they don't know what they would do without us, etc. While we don't pay his parents to live here, their decision, we pay for groceries for everyone and several household bills, electricity, internet, TV packages, etc. The house is mortgage-free. I also handle all the household cleaning and cooking. I arrange and take care of all their pets' veterinary appointments as well. I work from home, so it is easier for me to handle these tasks as I have flexibility. We also contribute to half of any house modifications or upgrades, as it has been mentioned that it will be our house one day. Recently, I've started feeling resentful because once they are done with work, they can come home and relax, while I have to finish work and then cook and clean without any help. On the weekends, I spend half of the day cleaning the house while they do as they please. This all came to a head last week. I was really unwell. I felt the worst I've ever felt and wanted nothing more than to sleep. However, once it got around to dinner time, I was woken by my mother-in-law to ask when I was getting up to make dinner. I didn't want to cause an argument, so I just got up and made dinner for them. But as I was in the kitchen struggling not to pass out, the three of them sat watching a movie, waiting for me to bring in their food. I didn't say anything at first. I waited until my husband and I were alone to bring up my concerns with the lack of help. My husband apologized and offered to help more, which I accepted. However, the next day was an exact repeat. I had to drag myself out of bed to cook, and once I'd brought in their food, my mother-in-law says, "Oh, you look truly awful. Poor you. Oh, by the way, later would you mind giving everywhere an extra clean? I don't want to get whatever you have." At that point, I accused them of treating me like a live-in maid and not caring about me outside of the services I provide for them. I pointed out that I wouldn't be in the communal areas if I hadn't been dragged out to cook, and that they could have handled one meal themselves. My husband sat there in silence. He thinks I should have brought it up more carefully at a time when I wasn't so emotional. I agree that I probably should have, but I was sick and stressed. I want to move out, but my husband and in-laws are still against it. Nothing has changed with what they expect from me, and I got no apology, just silent treatment from my mother-in-law for a couple of days. So, am I the jerk? After a few days, I started putting my wages into my own bank account. I removed all of my savings from our joint savings account and transferred everything from my own safety account, just in case. This turned out to be the best decision because I found out I was pregnant roughly 2 weeks after. I had been told at 15 that due to some medical conditions, I would never be able to get pregnant naturally, so it was a complete shock. Once I had a scan to check everything was okay, thankfully it was, we told my in-laws. And this is what gave me the final push I needed. Immediately, names were being thrown around and my mother-in-law started talking about reducing her hours to part-time or early retirement so she could be around to raise the baby. This rubbed me completely the wrong way. I didn't want anyone else raising my baby. Colors for the nursery and themes were constantly being discussed, but my opinions were never taken into consideration. Within a week, I felt as though I was just an incubator. The final straw happened when myself, my husband's cousin, and my mother-in-law went shopping. I had been looking at different kinds of breast pumps before being told that I would be bottle feeding so everyone could help out. I didn't want to cause a scene in the middle of the shop, so I moved on to outfits. However, everything I picked up or looked at was either the wrong color, style, or something. I had picked out one outfit, which would be my first baby purchase, and my mother-in-law snatched it out of my hands before I could pay, telling me that it was the wrong kind of outfit, it wasn't gender neutral enough, and if the baby is a boy like we're hoping, then it's far too feminine. I didn't need to be told what I could and couldn't dress my own child in, nor did I appreciate the suggestion that they would all prefer a boy, let alone being told how I would be feeding my child. So I left. I tried talking to my husband on 3 separate occasions, and he either made excuses or brushed me off entirely. I couldn't handle it anymore. I packed my bags and went to stay with my sister for a week. My husband called once and asked me to go home. Once. I made it clear I wouldn't be returning to live in that house, that I would raise the baby on my own if he didn't want to leave, but I would not allow my child to be raised in such a toxic environment. As a big surprise to no one, he stayed put. After that, I received a flood of texts in the family group chat, but I left and deleted them all. I have started the divorce process, and hopefully, since I have saved all the offensive messages from either my ex or his family about both myself and my baby, they won't get any form of custody. Although, since I announced the gender, they have all gone quite silent. I now have a small 3-bedroom house. I am only renting for now while I wait for the divorce to finalize, but it is plenty big enough for the 2 of us. My daughter will grow up surrounded by my family and plenty of cousins to play with. The house is pretty bare at the moment as I only got the keys a couple of days ago, but I have time before she arrives to make sure everything is ready. It is absolutely right that she left. It's essential not to let in-laws control your life and decisions. Taking control of your own happiness and creating a healthy environment for yourself and your child is a courageous and empowering choice. Wishing her all the best in this new chapter of her life. I never imagined that revealing my mother's past would lead to the unraveling of my engagement. Secrets, accusations, and a shocking connection between my fiancé's uncle and my mom's previous occupation came to light. As the tension escalated, I had to make a heart-wrenching decision to protect my mom. Here's how it all went down. I am 26 years old female, not from the USA, and my dad left my mom and me when I was only 5 years old. I also have a brother, 21 years old male. He left the country with his mistress and never tried to contact. We were really poor. My mom had to do some immoral things to get food on the table. She was a stripper and also sometimes pleased men to get money for us. She put me and my brother through school. I understood why my mom did what she did because we had no money, and she wanted us to have a better life, and I'm not ashamed because of it. I also started working part-time when I was 14. I was a good student, so I got a scholarship to a good university. My mom eventually stopped stripping when my brother got a part-time job too. She now only works as a waitress. I met my fiancé Javi when we were in college. This was my first serious relationship, and we both loved each other deeply. I never told Javi about my mom's past because she made me promise to never disclose it to anyone. I kept that promise, but it felt wrong to hide such significant information from my fiancé. Javi knew that my family was extremely poor, but he didn't care about our financial status. He is a kind-hearted person who always takes care of me. He even helped with some of the expenses for my brother's education, even though I told him not to. My mom also likes Javi, which is why she instructed me not to reveal anything about her past or previous occupation to him. A week ago, my mom and I went to Javi's house to meet his parents. I didn't realize that his uncle and aunt would also be there. When my mom saw his uncle, her face turned white, as if she had seen a ghost. His uncle also stared at my mom, as if he recognized her. Feeling uncomfortable, my mom expressed her desire to leave. "I can't stay here. Not with him around," she whispered to me, her voice trembling. Javi was confused by the situation, but we left earlier than expected. The following day, Javi came to our place and angrily accused me of lying to him. "You didn't tell me your mom was involved with my uncle." He practically spat the words at me, his face contorted with anger. "I swear I had no idea," I replied desperately. "My mom didn't recognize him either until we got there." He called me a gold digger, comparing me to my mother, and blamed her for his uncle's failed marriage. "You're just like her, using people for money," he accused, his eyes burning with rage. According to him, his uncle was one of my mom's regular clients and had hired her for her services. When his wife caught them together, she immediately filed for divorce. My mom was in tears, explaining that she had no idea he was married as she never asked about the marital status of her clients. "I don't get involved in their personal lives," she sobbed. "I didn't know he was married." I defended my mom, my frustration boiling over. "She's not to blame for his failed marriage. He's the one who cheated on his wife." but Javi continued to blame both me and my mom, claiming that he felt deceived. "You kept this from me," he shouted. "I can't trust you or your mom." He even went as far as saying that he didn't want to be with a promiscuous person's daughter because he believed I would follow in my mom's footsteps. "That's not fair," I yelled back. "You can't judge me based on my mom's past." My mom pleaded with him not to break off the engagement, her eyes filled with desperation. "We can make this work, please, Javi." But I was exhausted, torn between my love for Javi and my loyalty to my mom. I didn't want my mom to suffer because of our relationship, so I made a painful decision. I returned the engagement ring and told Javi to never show his face again. My mom is angry because she believes this might have been my only chance to get married, as she thinks no other man would marry into a family where the mother used to work in the adult industry. "It's not your fault," I whispered to her, tears in my eyes. "I couldn't let him blame you for something you had no control over." The room was heavy with tension, and the wounds inflicted during that intense confrontation seemed irreparable. But I think I did the right thing because I am not ashamed of my mom. I didn't even want to hide it in the first place. I wanted to tell him the truth, but my mom refused it. So, am I the jerk? To clear things out a bit, Javi knows everything about my life. He knows my dad fled the country, and we had to live in poverty because of it. He knows my mom got pregnant way too young. I did give him hints that my mom had to do shady things to get by. He probably thought my mom stole things. But I didn't disclose that she was in the adult industry. I wanted to tell him, but my mom said not to because she doesn't want this to escalate. Also, I never asked Javi to pay for my brother's education. He did it out of the goodness of his heart. I did promise to pay him back. I am not after his money. I do love him a lot. Even though we are broken up now, I still miss him. We have been together for 6 years. It is not easy to throw away those 6 years just like that. After I broke the engagement, I've been getting calls from my friends and Javi's family that I am making a huge mistake. My close friends know that my mom used to be involved in adult content, but mutual friends of mine and Javi do not know about it. So they are also questioning me if I ever did that. Javi did apologize. He said he got carried away by his emotions and he loves me. Not gonna lie, I love him too. I wanted to get past all of this. I know people have told me that I should not get married to this guy, but I was weak for a moment, until he told me that he is willing to let things go and start anew if my mom does not attend any wedding functions. I was shocked. Weddings are a big deal in our culture. There are many functions and parties surrounding the wedding. How can he ask that I do not involve my mom? He told me that because of my mom's past, it would be difficult for his family members to be around her. He convinced his mom with difficulty about this engagement. Also, since his uncle is going to be there, it will only remind him of bad things. At that moment, I realized that I was never a consideration. It was always him and making his family happy. My family is beneath them because we are not from a respectable background and come from homes of sex workers. I stood firm and told him no, it is not going to happen. I will not give in to their demands because the way I see it, my mom did not do anything wrong. It is funny how quickly people will judge a woman based on her work that she had to do to feed her kids, but no one will come forward to help her in time of her need. Javi threatened that I am making a huge mistake by letting him go. I just left. I do not have the energy to deal with it. I think this news is spreading like wildfire now. I may have to move out of the city because if this news reaches to my workplace, I know damn well people will ostracize me. So, I might look for a job in a different area. Lastly, I messaged him saying I am sorry for not telling him earlier about my mom, but I loved him a lot. I am sad that he chose this topic to ruin a 6-year-old relationship. I will be going to the bank and pay back the money he paid for my brother's education. I am still crying and jilted to say the least. Few months later, as I suspected, the news of my mom's previous profession did spread like wildfire. Some of mine and Javi's friends literally cut me off because they don't want to deal with someone from that background. I guess it is for the best, because it shows they are not my real friends. My true friends stuck with me. This impacted my brother a lot. I know living here would make things difficult. My brother will be graduating soon. I advised him to look for a master's program in a foreign country like in the USA, Canada, or the UK. Because of this whole fiasco, my mom and I moved to a new city. I took a transfer from my work. My boss, bless her heart, is the most amazing human being. She literally defended me. She told my coworkers not to bother me about anything other than work. My personal life shouldn't be any of their business. She's been so supportive of me and my family. She never questioned me or judged me. She transferred me to a different city at my request, and even managed to find an apartment for me and my mom. She's like Michael Scott, but mature. That is the only positive outcome from this. As for my ex, he is seeing another girl his parents set him up with. But he did call the first 2 months just to try to get me back. I had moments of weakness because I loved him so much. But the hurtful things he said about me and my family just played in my mind. I am still trying to heal from everything. I just hope I can get my brother out of this difficult situation and into a better place. People here are hypocrites and outdated. Nobody wants to change. Even people my age are so conservative. There has also been another bomb that dropped on us. That is, my piece of shit, sperm donor, found me on Facebook and messaged me to meet. I don't know what the hell he thinks. That I am going to forget those 20 years we struggled because he was a coward. Selfish snake. Some people really think women are involved in adult content for fun, especially when it involves a mother with children in a city that stigmatizes adult content work. Their flawed logic suggests that, without adult content workers, men wouldn't be able to engage in such behavior, so they place all the blame on the workers themselves. It is easier for them to scapegoat those who have to engage with deplorable individuals to survive, rather than facing the harsh reality of their own actions, including affairs, or even worse, the rape of women. As I held my newborn in my arms, basking in the joy of motherhood, a nurse named Karen suddenly cast doubt on my identity as the real mother and refused to give me my baby cause I'm not the real mom. Here's how it all went down. So, there I was, in the dimly lit maternity ward, exhausted and overwhelmed, having just given birth to my beautiful baby girl. My heart swelled with joy, but little did I know that the ordeal was far from over. As a first-time mother, I had been eagerly awaiting this day for months. My pregnancy had been a roller coaster of emotions, from the initial excitement to the sleepless nights and swollen feet. I had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, buying baby clothes, decorating the nursery, and reading parenting books cover to cover. The nursery, painted in soft pastel colors, was a testament to the love and anticipation I felt. As I lay there, cradling my newborn in my arms, a nurse named Karen entered the room. Her stern expression was completely out of place in the joyful room. With a frown, she glanced at me and then at my baby. Her eyes narrowed as she muttered those words that would send my world into chaos. "This baby is not yours." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart raced and I clutched my baby tighter. "What? You saw me give birth?" I exclaimed, my voice quivering with a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. Karen crossed her arms, her skepticism unwavering. "I've been doing this job for years, and I know when something isn't right," she replied, her tone accusatory. "You don't look like the real mother." My mind was spinning. How could she doubt that I was the mother of this beautiful baby I had just brought into the world? The rising tension in the room was noticeable as Karen's refusal to acknowledge my motherhood ignited a fire within me. Karen, her annoyance growing by the second, continued to challenge me. "Are you sure you're the one who delivered this baby?" she asked, her tone incredulous. "I can't seem to remember you being in this room earlier." My frustration deepened. "Of course I delivered this baby! I was right here in this very bed!" I shot back, my voice filled with determination. I demanded, "Get me a supervisor or someone in charge right now!" I was not going to let this nurse take my baby away from me based on some unfounded suspicion. Karen, however, remained stubbornly defiant. She folded her arms across her chest, a scowl etched on her face. "I don't know," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. "I still have my doubts." My heart sank. How could she continue to doubt me after everything I had been through? I watched in disbelief as the supervisor arrived, their presence only seeming to fuel Karen's obstinacy. The supervisor tried to mediate. "All right, let's all calm down. I understand there's some confusion here. Karen, please explain your concerns." Karen answered, "I can't be entirely sure if this woman is the real mother. I just don't remember her delivering the baby, and I've seen some strange things in my years as a nurse." My frustration deepened, and I felt my eyes welling up with tears. "You saw me give birth," I protested, my voice quivering with emotion. The supervisor immediately calmed me, saying, "I apologize for the confusion. We'll review the situation further, but for now, your baby is safe with you." Relief washed over me as I clung to my newborn, tears of frustration turning into tears of joy. Although Karen's doubts still lingered like a dark cloud, I had at least won this round. My daughter was safe in my arms, and I was finally acknowledged as the real mother. As the hours passed, I was able to prove that I was indeed the mother of the newborn, thanks to the hospital records. I continued to care for my baby, holding her close and feeling an overwhelming sense of relief. Karen, on the other hand, seemed embarrassed by her earlier mistake and kept her distance. The incident had taught us all a valuable lesson about jumping to conclusions, especially when it involves something as important as a mother's identity. Leaving the hospital with my newborn daughter was a joyous and emotional experience. All the preparations I had made for her, from the nursery decorations to the tiny onesies, felt worthwhile now that we were finally going home together. As I cradled my precious baby girl in my arms, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was her real mother. and nothing could change that fact. The incident with Karen had a silver lining. She was suspended from her duties due to her unfounded accusations. But most importantly, my heart was now filled with an even greater love and determination to provide the best life possible for my little one. And Karen, well, she would be remembered as the nurse who had once doubted a mother's love, but had ultimately learned a valuable lesson in humility. That incident must have been so emotional for the mom. I'm glad she got to take her baby home and start their new life together. I never expected a casual swim in the pool to turn into a nightmare. Little did I know, my innocent presence and relaxation would lead to false accusations and a confrontation with an entitled dad. Here's how it all went down. I'm a 28-year-old male, and I'm autistic. I just wanted to spend some time relaxing in our local swimming pool. I had my black goggles with me, and I enjoyed the soothing feeling of swimming underwater. Sometimes I'd simply rest against the poolside and bask in the calmness of the moment. I was the only adult male without any children in the pool that day, but I thought nothing of it because the pool was open for everyone, with both shallow and deep ends. While I was peacefully resting by the poolside, a manager, who wasn't even a lifeguard, approached me. He informed me that my presence and behavior were making someone uncomfortable. "Excuse me, sir, I need to talk to you for a moment. We've received a complaint about your behavior," he said. At first, I thought I had upset an overworried parent, and as a parent myself, I felt terrible. I immediately explained to the manager that I was simply relaxing by the poolside. "I'm just here to relax by the pool. I enjoy swimming underwater with my goggles, and sometimes I like to rest here." I didn't mean to make anyone uncomfortable, I told him. I offered to take off my goggles to reassure them and even expressed my willingness to apologize to the person who had complained. The manager seemed to accept my explanation, and presumably went back to inform the concerned parent that I was sorry for unintentionally causing distress. However, my peaceful moment by the pool didn't last long. After about 10 minutes, the manager returned, and this time, he had a grave expression on his face. "I'm sorry, but the police have arrived, and they want to speak with you," he said. I was shocked, and asked if it was about me. "The police? Is it about me?" I inquired. The manager confirmed that they indeed wanted to talk to me. That's when I encountered the entitled dad for the first time. "You better go quietly, or I'll tell everyone here you're a pedophile," he said with a menacing tone. He was a big guy, maybe in his early to mid-30s, and he looked physically fit. He didn't say much to me, but what he did say was chilling. With those words, he walked away, leaving me bewildered and utterly outraged. The manager escorted me out of the pool area, and although I felt tempted to confront that jerk, I knew it wouldn't end well. I managed to keep my composure and left without further incident, feeling humiliated and unjustly accused. When I reached the locker rooms, I found 2 policewomen waiting for me. Fortunately, they were extremely nice and friendly throughout the entire encounter. After grabbing a towel, they started asking me about the situation and what I had been doing at the pool. I was honest with them and explained that I was simply trying to relax and had no idea that my presence was upsetting someone. I also disclosed that I am autistic, which led one of the officers to share that they had a family member who was also autistic. They then asked for my details to run them through their database. While that was taking place, the entitled dad walked by and one of the officers requested to speak with him. He agreed, and they went elsewhere to have a conversation. I changed back into my clothes, and as I was exiting the changing room, I encountered the entitled dad standing in my way with his back to me. I couldn't hear his exact words over the noise in the room, but I did hear him loudly instruct his kids to stay put while he went to get changed. He walked away without seeing me, and I left the locker room. The police stayed with me in the lobby until their database came back. Of course, it came back that I had no history of crime, and the gym staff had told the officers I had no history of disturbing other people, so I was free to go. However, the entitled dad was hanging around near the back of the lobby, watching me. The police saw this too, and offered to give me a ride home since I'd walked to the gym. I accepted since I was pretty shell-shocked by the whole ordeal, and worried this guy would try something on my way home. In all, this was a really scary experience. I'm just glad the manager and the police were professional enough to let me speak my piece. I should mention there were other parents in the pool who didn't care about my presence. Another dad and his kids were playing right next to me, and he didn't care. I went back to the gym today to see if the same manager was on duty. Thankfully he was, and he took me aside to explain his perspective on things. I'll call him Mike, not his real name. Apparently, this Kevin seemed to be trouble from the start, being very irate with Mike, as well as other staff members. The only reason it wasn't the lifeguards dealing with him was because they were scared of him, being 17 to 18-year-olds, and this guy was an early 30s looking buff man. Even Mike, who was roughly the same age as Kevin, was concerned with his behavior, thinking if he got near me, that we'd end up throwing hands. When Mike first told him that I had offered to leave my goggles off so I wouldn't dive underwater, that apparently wasn't good enough. Then, when the police arrived, Mike had actually just told them he was concerned for my safety. Nothing about the pedophile accusation. No wonder they were so nice. I then asked Mike if at any point he thought I really was a threat to the kids. He laughed and said no, saying that when I had mentioned I had kids of my own, the fact that I had offered to apologize and attempt to de-escalate things, he could tell I wasn't dangerous. He was thinking more about me being safe than whether or not I was a threat. The police seemed to think that way too. At one point after I left, Kevin was getting mouthy again, and a receptionist chewed him out for his actions. Then Mike asked if I made it home okay, and I told him about the police giving me a ride. Their car wasn't in sight of the building. He was relieved and hoped this event hadn't put me off coming back. I do plan to come back to this gym now, since I can count on the staff to have my back now. But yeah, everything is cool now. And everybody knows what a jerk this guy is, so I don't think I'm in any further trouble anymore. Oh, and to answer why I left, I was given the choice whether to go or not. No one told me to leave. I was planning on leaving a few minutes before this encounter anyway, so I didn't mind too much. It was only when the police officer caught Kevin staring at me that they offered to give me a ride. I asked if they had a police log number for what happened. Mike said they weren't given one but offered to chase it up for me. I declined, not really wanting to put myself any further into an issue that seems more or less resolved anyway. It's disheartening to hear about incidents where innocent individuals face false accusations and unjust treatment. We need to promote inclusivity and understanding to create a society where everyone feels comfortable and safe in public spaces. I never thought that a few forgotten chores could push me to the edge of sanity, but as I stood on the brink of a messy divorce, I couldn't help but question my own judgment. The constant struggle to balance my responsibilities, my business, and my own well-being against a husband who seemed oblivious to it all had brought me to a breaking point. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. Here's how it all went down. My husband, who is 40 years old, and I, who am 39 years old, have been married for 12 years and together for 13. Overall, we have a wonderful marriage. However, I often find myself responsible for the majority of the housework, cooking, errands, laundry, and waking up early with our youngest son, who is 6 years old, and our other son, who is 13 years old, even on weekends. I also spend a significant amount of time cleaning up after my husband because he forgets to do things. As a result, I rarely have any free time and I never get the opportunity to sleep in. Many of the things he forgets are minor, such as leaving shoes in the walkway, leaving lint from the lint trap on top of the dryer instead of disposing of it, putting trash in an already full trash can, leaving used glasses out instead of bringing them to the sink, and leaving used wash rags on the shower floor, among others. It may seem trivial, but over time, these small things take up a significant amount of my time cleaning up after a grown-up, especially when I'm already cleaning up after 2 non-grown-ups. I own a business and am working on my degree, so I have very little free time to spare. On the other hand, he works from home and has the luxury of sleeping in, taking nap breaks, playing video games during lunch breaks, and spending an hour or two every evening playing video games to decompress while I study. He does allow me some time to go to the gym or go for a run, but I find myself skipping these activities more and more just to keep up with the mess and chores at home. When I bring this up, he claims it's unfair because I only focus on the few times he forgets to clean up after himself, without acknowledging all the other things he does. I'm not trying to be unfair, I tell him. It's just that it gets really overwhelming when I have to clean up after you, especially when it happens frequently. He does clean up after himself about 50% of the time, depending on what it is. But some things he legitimately never does, like leaving lint on the dryer or throwing away used toilet paper rolls. He also suffers from a sleep disorder, which can make a person feel foggy sometimes. I get that you have a sleep disorder, I say, trying to be understanding. But it's not just about that. It's about us sharing responsibilities and maintaining our living space together. He says I should be more compassionate with him and accept this as a part of loving someone with a chronic illness. The truth is, I do understand what chronic illness is like, and I do have compassion. I myself have been living with chronic pain and fatigue for years, and am finally undergoing the diagnostic and treatment process for lupus and RA. I do have compassion, I assure him. I know what it's like to deal with chronic illness, but we also need to find a balance that works for both of us in this relationship. I constantly experience pain and exhaustion. Despite this, I push through and make sure to maintain a reasonable level of order and cleanliness in my home, because that's what responsible adults do for their children. I don't have the luxury of forgetting to do important tasks like laundry, dishes, or cleaning because no one else will do them. My partner also claims that my standards of cleanliness are unreasonably high. However, I believe that not wanting to leave urine stains around the base of the toilet or leaving used dishes and food on counters in an area known for roaches is simply having a basic standard of cleanliness. In comparison, I feel like his standards are lower than those of the average adult, as most people would find those habits quite unhygienic. One of the lessons I've learned through my journey with Aid is the importance of saying no. Although I deeply love my husband and best friend, I don't see this situation changing unless he is compelled to make an effort. I'm beginning to realize that removing myself from the equation may be the best option for preserving my own sanity. This way, I will have one less person to clean up after and can find some much-needed downtime through shared custody. Even if he only had the kids on 1 day a week, I feel like custody sharing might force him to hold himself to a reasonable standard of hygiene and cleanliness too. I definitely enable his laziness out of necessity to meet basic, safe levels of cleanliness. Without me there, he'd have to learn to be consistent or risk losing visitation. This is my only complaint within the marriage. We really do love and care for each other, and he's emotionally very kind and supportive. I love him very much. Am I a jerk divorcing over this? We fought about it, and I ended up ugly crying, partially out of frustration and partially because I'd been up since 4:45 a.m. with the youngest. I told him that it was about lint on the washer and used toilet rolls on the sink, but not really. I said that I felt like he didn't listen nor care to try. Through my tears, I poured out my feelings, saying, "It's not just about the lint and the toilet paper rolls, it's about feeling like my needs and concerns aren't heard or understood." We apologized to each other, and he wrapped me up in our duvet, reassuring me with his actions. He took over the housework and tended to the kids. He's genuinely sweet and does try when he realizes how much it means to me. It's been nice to have a day off, but I can't help but be skeptical because this isn't the first time I've reached a breaking point or felt deeply upset, only for him to be extra nice for a while, only to revert to his old habits in a few days. I guess we'll see how things unfold from here. After the meltdown on the day, he did as promised and took over the housework and kids for the day. However, as I had feared, by the next day, he had reverted back to his old, dismissive, chauvinistic self. He didn't contribute to any housework for the rest of the week, leaving me in a position of unpreparedness for a very important test due tomorrow. This is his usual pattern. He puts in effort just long enough to make me think he has changed, and then he reverts back. Starting on Sunday, I reminded him multiple times that I needed time to study. The test is on math, and it's difficult. My plan was to study for 2 hours per day and be prepared by Friday. This meant he would need to help out with tasks like giving baths and reading bedtime stories so I could focus. But it didn't happen. As a result, I ended up using the time I needed to study to cook, clean, and do laundry. Now, it's late on the eve of the test, and I have only had 1 hour of study time. I'm exhausted and unable to even imagine practicing proportions or quadratic equations right now. Out of frustration, I broke down and told him that I couldn't handle it anymore. I run my own business, work hard in school, and keep everything running smoothly. It's an incredibly unfair burden, and I'm tired of trying to make him care. I asked him how he could treat his female coworkers as equals, but not extend that same respect to me. He admitted to being a hypocrite and stormed off to play video games. At this moment, I'm considering taking incompletes for the semester so I can focus on my business and navigate a messy divorce from someone who acts like a big man baby. Before marrying, discussing living arrangements and division of household chores should definitely be a part of the conversation. It's important for both parties to be clear about their expectations and responsibilities to avoid potential conflicts down the line. Communication and understanding are key in maintaining a healthy and balanced relationship. I never expected that a simple offer to pay for a gender reveal scan would spiral into a chaotic battle for control and inclusion. As tensions rise and boundaries are tested, the true colors of my family begin to surface. Secrets, manipulation, and conflicting loyalties threaten to tear us apart. Here's how it all went down. So my girlfriend and I found out in August that we were going to be parents to our first child. Overall, everyone was very happy about the news. However, I was initially shocked because it wasn't planned. In that moment, I called my mother for reassurance, and it helped. I understand that she wasn't happy that I told her over a phone call, and I apologize for that. We have since resolved the issue and moved on. My sister has been supportive. She helped us move to a new house and wants to take my partner out for baby shopping in a few weeks. However, my mother has been less helpful. During a FaceTime conversation in mid-August about housing options, My mother randomly asked me if my partner was on the pill. I recalled the awkward moment vividly. "So, Mom, we've been looking at houses in the neighborhood." Before I could finish, my mother interrupted. "Wait, dear, I have a question. Is your partner on birth control?" I blinked in surprise, not expecting this question at all. Yeah, Mom," I replied, slightly taken aback. "She's been on the pill for a while now. I've even seen her take it." My mother's inquiry felt like she was insinuating that I had intentionally trapped my partner into having a baby. It was an uncomfortable and unnecessary question that left me feeling defensive and hurt. I've had some concerns about my sister. While I appreciate her excitement, I sometimes feel that she is overly involved. I shared my feelings with my sister during one of our conversations. "Sis, I really appreciate all the support you've been giving us, but I have some concerns." She looked at me attentively, waiting for me to continue. "I love that you want to be so involved, but sometimes it feels like you're making decisions for us," I explained. "You mentioned having the baby with us every weekend so we could have some couple time, but we need to consider both our families' needs." My sister nodded, understanding my point. "You're right, I might have gotten carried away with my excitement." She also expressed concern about us moving closer to my girlfriend's family than mine. She questioned the support we would receive from her family, as her mother lives 2 hours away. I reassured my sister. "You know, my partner's mother is incredibly supportive. She visits every weekend to care for her own mother, who has dementia. We'll be just fine, and we'll make sure to balance time between both sides of the family." My sister kindly offered to pay for our gender reveal scan, which we both appreciated. Understandably, she wanted to attend the appointment, since she was covering the expenses. "Hey," my sister said with a warm smile, "I'd love to cover the cost of the gender reveal scan for you guys. It's a special moment, and I want to be a part of it." We exchanged grateful glances and thanked her for her generosity. However, things took a bit of a turn when she suggested that we invite our mom as well, as the facility allowed up to 5 people. "Actually," I hesitated, "we were thinking about inviting my girlfriend's mom too." My sister raised an eyebrow, looking a bit surprised. "Why her mom? This is our family's involvement in the pregnancy, and your girlfriend's family will be present at other events." We explained that it wasn't about excluding anyone, but rather having support during this personal appointment. My girlfriend didn't want it to be just my family present, and she had her own reasons for wanting her mom there. Previously, my mom had insisted that it should either be just my family or no scan at all. In response, I agreed to pay for the scan ourselves. "I'm sorry, Mom," I told her during a phone call, "but we feel that it's important to have both our families there. We don't want to exclude anyone." My sister then messaged my girlfriend, explaining her reasoning, which left her in tears. My girlfriend, still emotional from the message, told me what my sister had said. "She mentioned that your family prefers to keep things separate and can be a bit antisocial," she sniffled. "They believed that meeting my mom at the scan would be awkward." We both felt frustrated and hurt by my family's stance. It seemed like they were prioritizing their own comfort over our wishes and the desire for both of our families to be involved in this special moment. Both my mom and sister are trying to make me understand their point of view. While I do understand their perspective, I simply do not agree with it. My girlfriend's mom is not upset about not being included. She is more concerned about how this situation has affected us. She reassured me not to worry about my family and offered to pay for the scan herself, allowing me to invite whomever I want. Despite reaching agreements on our side, I still have doubts due to my sister's initial offer to pay. Additionally, I was contemplating inviting my dad, but my girlfriend's mom believes that it would upset my family. Am I the jerk here? To provide further clarification, the phone call with my mom was not initially met with a negative reaction. She was happy and congratulated me based on the assumption that we were deciding to keep the baby at that time. It was only later revealed that she wasn't too thrilled when we recorded my sister's reaction. At an event, I informed my mother that I would be driving to my dad's place to see him the next day. My mom doesn't think my dad does enough for me. Although we rarely see each other in person, maybe once or twice a year, our relationship is fine. This was his first time becoming a grandfather, while it was my mother's 4th time. My sister already has 3 children of her own. She is eager to have a 4th child, but her husband keeps refusing. When I mentioned this to my mom, she suggested FaceTiming him, but I declined. She then said, "So he gets a live surprise and I get a phone call?" I explained that I needed initial support and apologized that she found out this way. Some people have asked about the situation with my dad. He and my mom have been divorced for 24 years. He wasn't the kindest to my mother at the time, and I had a stepmother who constantly drove a wedge between my dad and me. However, she has been out of the picture for a few years now. I have informed my dad about the current situation, and he believes that my mom and sister are being ridiculous. People have told me that I need to have a backbone, and I have been working hard in therapy to overcome this. To provide some background, I was a vulnerable child who was suspected of having autism at a young age. However, my mom refused to have me assessed because she believed I should learn alongside neurotypical children. This approach didn't work, as I constantly doubted myself. With the help of people like my sister, who would point out my mistakes, my confidence continued to suffer. It wasn't until I went through a breakup at the age of 23 and experienced a downward spiral of depression that I sought more help. Doctors determined that I didn't have autism, but rather anxiety. However, my mom and sister insist that I do have autism because they believe I would receive more support. But when I connect it with my problem now, it feels like manipulation. I've pushed back on several occasions and asked to be left alone. I would receive comments about how something I did was due to autism, which I asked them to stop. My sister has 2 children diagnosed with autism and 1 with ADHD, and she works for an autism charity. After being diagnosed with anxiety and depression, I started taking Prozac. I had also been in a relationship with an ex at a different time, and I noticed subtle controlling behaviors. We didn't work out, and my family supported me through that. I am realizing that narcissistic individuals often clash with each other because they try to expose the other person in order to make themselves look better. So my upbringing was conflicting, as there was both nitpicking and seemingly genuine care. My mother has also experienced abusive relationships and the loss of a partner, so I attributed her strange behavior to that. The same goes for my sister, who went through a stillbirth. Now, I'm with a wonderful person, ready to start a family. And while it is unfortunate that my family couldn't be cooperative and understanding, my partner and our baby come first. We need each other above all else, and no one should dictate who takes care of them or anything else. I confronted my mother about her comment regarding the baby trap, and she apologized to me, but not to my partner, who overheard the conversation. Since then, she has been distant. Now, I'm questioning why I am even allowing her to come to the scan if my partner's mother will be coming after her behavior. My mother has a tendency to backtrack, often saying something that could annoy or upset someone and then claiming it was a joke. I have since called her out on her backpedaling, but she denies it. My mother's strange views on separating from my partner's family stem from her own anxiety, I believe. We suspect she may be on the autism spectrum, but she is in denial about it. We have witnessed moments where she experiences sensory overload, becomes obsessed with specific topics, mostly conspiracy theories, lacks a filter at times, and struggles to see things from others' perspectives. I believe my sister wants to be seen as the best guardian, possibly even a parent, and views her family as a threat. Some people questioned the need for a reveal scan, but we thought it would be a nice experience for our first child. I understand that it may not be everyone's preference, but it is what we want to do. Anyway, my sister called me on Sunday, and I explained that my girlfriend should be able to have whoever she wants at the scan. She expressed concerns about the awkwardness of the situation at the scan, so I suggested a coffee meetup instead. She said she would discuss it with my mother. However, my mother declined the idea, claiming it was too formal. In her words, she said, "I'm sure I'll meet them someday." She then suggested having 2 separate scans for each side of the family, but I turned down this suggestion as I found it inappropriate. My girlfriend should not be treated as a test subject for other people's enjoyment. Instead, I propose that we book our own scan and decide who to invite, whether it's just the 2 of us or others. However, this suggestion made my mother respond passive-aggressively, saying, "Fine, do what you want. I've been nothing but supportive, and your girlfriend is going to want her family there for everything." I reassured her that this was not the case and that my girlfriend wants both families involved. Knowing that they would continue to make offers regarding the scan, I sent them a long message in a group chat. My sister attempted to gaslight me into feeling guilty. After she said we should part ways, I blocked her on all platforms. I refuse to allow that kind of influence in my life, and I especially won't subject my girlfriend to it if they are not going to respect our boundaries. Shortly after, my mother called me and told me that my message was condescending, cold, and formal. She didn't understand why I was overreacting about the scan and told me not to interrupt her. I explained to her that it's not just about the scan, but about her excessive involvement in general. It is clear that my sister left out certain details because she was unaware of my sister's desire to look after the baby every weekend and her insecurity about the support from my girlfriend's family. My mother suggested that we all meet up to talk, but I refuse to be bullied. If I am to attend a meeting, I want someone in my corner. My mother is attempting to play the role of peacemaker and has sided with my sister's erratic behavior, so I don't fully trust either of them. As for the scan, my girlfriend and I have booked our own appointment, and we plan to have a reveal party next weekend where everyone is welcome. However, for now, I will not be inviting my mother and sister. I've explained the situation to my dad, and he is disgusted by their behavior. It's worth noting that my sister and I have different fathers. After a few days, we've already made our booking for the scan. The decision on who attends the scan depends on individual preferences. It's important to clarify that this decision is not something anyone has dictated. Instead, it's something we've discussed because she's the one carrying the baby and desires support from both families. Unfortunately, disagreements about what should be our decision have made things challenging. We're embarking on the journey of starting our own family, so we believe it's our prerogative to make these choices. I felt uncomfortable with the attempt to change our minds after we declined the additional conditions without a willingness to compromise on meeting beforehand. To be candid, it seemed like an intrusion. While we haven't communicated much, Mom, I assume that you both share similar sentiments. Going forward, events like the baby shower will be separate for each family, allowing close friends and family to participate. We extend an open invitation to both families, including the upcoming reveal after the scan next weekend. Hosting separate events for each family would not only be more costly, but also demand more time and effort in organization and attendance. There's no reason why either family should be excluded from events that involve the family we are creating. If you choose not to spend time with her family, it's a matter of personal preference, not a rigid rule. Both my mom and sister have reached out to me via text. I had borrowed £50 from my sister to help with my car repair. Given that my girlfriend and I have been occupied with moving, one of my tires blew out at a rather inconvenient time. I promised to repay her on payday, which was last Thursday. Her text demanded the money back and implied that I was withholding it unjustly, even going so far as to suggest that her kids needed it. While I suspected this was an attempt to provoke a reaction, I chose to silently return the money, maintaining my integrity. She then proceeded to text my girlfriend, despite my explicit request in my previous message not to involve her in this matter. Her message expressed concern about the scan even though it was scheduled for the 15th, originally her intended date, though she seemed confused, and urged my girlfriend not to be upset. It seems she is fishing for information and is more focused on the baby than our relationship. My girlfriend has chosen not to respond. Earlier this week, my nan also texted me saying, "I rarely intervene, but I care for all of you and wish to mend this rift." Before your sister got to know all the people at school, I attended every meeting with her. She's socially shy when it comes to meeting new people, so, like Mom, I was her comfort. However, I've stepped back now. Please reconcile. I believe she understands that you need space. She's heartbroken. Extend your hand. Her intentions were well-meaning. You've made your point, but she adores you and holds your girlfriend in high regard. My love to you both, always. Please mend this rift for me. After a day of contemplation, I responded that it wasn't my responsibility to repair the rift. While I don't wish for family relationships to deteriorate, I need my space. They've exerted control over me and caused me pain too many times, and I won't tolerate it any longer. My nan replied, expressing her understanding and stating that she won't take sides. Yesterday morning, my mom reached out, expressing her concern for my well-being and assuming that the scan was this weekend, even though she originally wanted to attend but is now away. She mentioned a desire to catch up during the week. However, it doesn't appear that either of them has expressed remorse for their behavior. It is important to establish boundaries with your family and ensure they respect your wishes and treat you with the respect you deserve. You have the right to make decisions for yourself, your partner, and your growing family. Remember that you do not have to negotiate with manipulative or controlling individuals. Be firm and direct in asserting your boundaries. If they try to undermine your decisions, take charge and handle things on your own. Surround yourself with supportive and respectful people. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now or you're definitely the jerk.